Alright guys, it's time for my, hopefully my last video of today, because I've already, put out 3 of them. So, this is Merlinus, and why should you care about Merlinus? Well, because she's a really good unit. Now, Global has not had the Crystal of Reunion collab event yet, but they might have it in the future, so I figured we would go over it, because she recently got her Kaigan. And now she's an absolute monster, as if she wasn't already good enough before. So go ahead and take a look at her. She's I think, a pretty well-designed unit. I like her outfit a lot. It's got a lot of character to it. While the actual collab itself does not have a storyline, I think Merlinus has enough plot to go around. So there is that, if you are into that kind of thing. I just thought I'd throw that out there, because my god, there's a lot of plot there. Okay, enough of that. Anyways, let's take a look at her Kaigan. So this is, I think, the most economical way to Kaigan her. And there's a couple reasons I did it this way. My collab Kaigan frags are definitely not enough to Kaigan all of the units I want to Kaigan, so I have to use them sparingly. So this is, I think, the best setup, that I lose the least while gaining the most. So, obviously, Gate 1 for all of those beautiful HP and miscellaneous stats. Now, her Gate 2. This is part of what's going to make her absolutely insane as a unit. And I mean absolutely insane. So, it is going to upgrade her Overdrive passive. But it is also going to give her her buff duration +1. So, why does this matter? It's because Merlinus basically has Drain Dimension. And what this will let her do is she can use Drain Dimension, and then she can use the buff for 2 turns. Now, a level 70 Merlinus would have been taking advantage of this because she has the Bard class and can do that. And that's great until she gets Overdrive, and then she wants Overdrive in her unique instead. But buff duration +1 onto that Overdrive, oh my god, she now has Drain Dimension for 2 turns. You could also theoretically, I think this stacks, use the Bard buff to get it to last for 3 turns, which would be even crazier. It also gives her an additional 20 fire exploit, as if she didn't already do insane damage already. And that is it for that. But I just wanted to point out that her unique only has 20% magic attack and -30 cast time ratio. So theoretically, while it could be possible to take that away in favor of an extra turn of Drain Dimension for more damage, keep in mind that she does have cast time, so that's something you gotta balance. Now for Gate 3, this isn't, her leader skill just isn't, her leader skill alone is insanely good. It's 50% HP, 30% magic, and 20% magic defense. Her Kaigan leader skill, 10% of that magic defense goes into all defense. It's just not that good of an upgrade, and it's not worth your resources. We max Gate 4 because it's going to give her like an additional 100 magic attack, because clearly she needed more magic attack. She's almost at 1.2k, and I just didn't choose to put anything into Gate 5, and that is because in her Gate 5, she only gets an extra cast on her single target nuke, which isn't even her highest damage skill, by the way. Her weapon ability is. And that's AoE. And honestly, I think abusing her AoEs is a lot more effective, and even if you do need to use a single target attack, a slightly lower cast time along with a 1 additional use, I just don't think is going to make as big of a difference. The count reduction goes from like 75 to 100, so they get like 25% of their count further reduced, so it's more like a black hole. But I just don't see this being super useful, because nowadays, like the big bosses, the really big bad bosses, they resist countdown anyways. Like raid bosses, you can't count down them these days. Most of them you can. So I just don't think it's worth investing into. The other 2 skills that get the upgrade, I just don't think are quite worth it, because she's going to want to run her unique. So for her Nenso, she actually has the free Nenso of her collab. So there's that. So that there's a positive and a negative to this. The positive is you're guaranteed to get the Nenso, you're guaranteed to get the VCR, and you're guaranteed to get the max limit break. The downside is the stats aren't nearly as good as Arthur's might be. So the group up top is 64 magic defense, and this is Merlinus and Arthur. Yeah, what are you gonna do? I mean, there's just not much there. For the second group here, it's Merlinus only, and it's got 64 magic attack and 8 hit rate, which is good for a mage, although Merlinus' dex is at 378, so it's not atrocious. She can hit things just fine. And because of the recent changes to the way max limit break works, she'll get an additional 5 agility on the map because it's max limit break, and it's a freebie. If it was a gadget, it'd be 10, but since it's free, it's 5. Now, for the VCR. The VCR is okay. So the VCR is only worth using if you have 3 equip slots. If you have 3 equip slots, it's probably the best thing she can put in on their 3rd equip slot. But if she only has 2, you kind of skip it anyways. It is 10 water damage, 30 stop resistance, and 30 clock down resistance, along with a 3-turn buff, which I believe gives her 65 fire exploit, if I remember correctly. Which, don't forget, she will be getting an additional turn, at least 1 additional turn of, because of her Kaigan. Now, she does have her own weapon, and this is completely farmable, and last time, if I remember correctly, the drop rates were pretty high, so you can get a couple of these. These are actually slightly better than the Ultima staff. It's got 30 magic attack and 6 speed, which makes it a great general use staff, because it has the speed and magic attack stat. But in global, it's probably not as good because the battlefield drama is just better on everyone that isn't Merlinus. So it might be worth getting 1 or 2 of these, maybe even 3, if you hate switching things around. But in general, you're going to need at least 1 for your Merlinus, and that's it. Regent Armour. I definitely like the Regent Armour on her. She doesn't necessarily need it because she does have that Drain Dimension-like skill, which is going to give her heals. But nothing wrong with a little bit more sustain with a good HP base. Now, you could always run something like Tamamo VCR or Rainbow Armor if you would like to instead, but it's not going to make that big of a difference. These, I think, are her best setup. I really can't think of any other good pieces of gear that would really change anything. I mean, it's got 10 water all damage, which means that the Fiona VCR is only going to benefit her by giving her more hit rate at the expense of that buff. And I just don't think that's really a good trade-off because she already has some additional hit rate and she has decent dex. Obviously, if you have to hit a giant enemy, like basically a raid boss, running something like raid gear might be better. But even then, it's not a ton of additional damage, and honestly, she'd probably still be better off with her own VCR. On maps that you have to resist missile or magic damage, it might be worth using the Fujiga VCR, but that kind of goes without saying for any unit. The Saint Meteor has its place, as does this Curious Doll, although I really don't see it happening, and I tried to find a way to make this work, and I just really couldn't. The VCR is just going to be your best 3rd slot. Now for her loadout. So her loadout, you're going to be running the unique main and sub and reactive. And the reactive is sort of like a counter to skills and stuff. I believe it triggers off of skills. I have to double check that. I can actually probably check that right now. And I forgot that I'm not that good at reading Japanese. Anyways, it's only got a 50% rate when it does trigger, but it can no-act the enemy, which is pretty nice. Now, I prefer to run the unique, but you could always run the extra buff duration turn instead. But the unique gives her extra magic damage as well as cast time reduction, and she does have a lot of skills with cast time. I guess you can't see it here. And obviously I'm going to be running Overdrive, which in this case has the upgraded passive. So part of what makes Merlinus so good is not only does she have an insanely good water magic leader skill, but the water magic units are just very well built. I mean, you have Ultima as an option, Lavina as an option, Lofia as an option, Krima as another option, Anika as another option, although she's more support than magic, doesn't really do much damage. There's just a lot of magic water units that you have available at your disposal, and the 50% HP is always going to be a great option. However, you don't necessarily have to run with the Merlinus lead skill. Instead, you could run with the Ultima lead skill, and while my Ultima still needs a couple more shards in order to get to 555, when he does, he would have a countdown, and that's not cast time reduction, it's countdown, which is even better. These are generally considered among the best leader skills in the game, and you'd sacrifice a little bit of HP and 10% magic attack because his Kaigan leader skill gives him additional 20, and in exchange, your Merlinus will be running around a bit faster. Now, for another option, you could run Ank's leader skill, and once again, I just need a couple more days, and this will be changed. But it's his current leader skill is 30% HP, 20% physical attack, and 20% fire exploit. However, his Kaigan leader skill is 30% HP, 20% water all damage, and 20% fire exploit. So what this means is that theoretically, you might be able to do even more damage with Ankh and run her on a mixed team of physical attack and magic attack, which is just great. It's just great. So you could run Ankh, Itsuki, Merlinus, and Yorus all in the same team, and they all have a bunch of water attacks that can benefit from that fire exploit and the water all damage. While it's not quite as potent as physical attack or magic attack on a single stat scaling unit, it's still going to be very powerful. And 30% HP just to make sure you're not dying like a dog. As well as with Ankh as the leaders, you can just run her with any of these great water units. I mean, we have Lamia, which I don't think I've done a video on yet, and I should do a video on it because she's actually not that bad anymore. And water has some of my favorite units in the game, which is why when I saw her Kaigan, I'm like, I've got to have this, which is why I dropped 15,000 gems today. And on the step 5, I was kind of hoping to get 150 frags of a different unit that I didn't have, but I got 150 Merlinus frags, so that was basically like getting 150 Kaigan shards for her, because I actually spent the water shards to 85 her before I started, just in case that happened, and it did. So my bets paid off, and I got a good return on that, and it felt really good to not get completely screwed out of a bunch of Kaigan frags, because Kaigan frags are more valuable than elemental frags. That's just my personal opinion, because I feel like I just get them at a slower rate these days, and the banners that they come on just aren't the same as they used to be. It used to be 5 steps for that, and now it's 7 steps, which means next collab it's going to be 9 steps because Gumi sucks. And I do kind of mean that, but it does sometimes get a little frustrating that things have been getting significantly more expensive at a much faster rate than they used to, it feels like. But hey, what can you do? So I'm going to be showing off the majority of her kit here. So probably going to have to do this in 2 takes. So to start with, I'm going to show off her kit, and then I'm going to show you what kind of damage she can do. So for the first thing, we've got this rather quick cast, high skill count, single target attack. This is honestly what I'll use to finish off people or just kill things that don't have a ton of HP, because it's a super fast cast time. And it's relatively low joules. And one thing you should know about Merlinus is that if you're not careful, you will run out of joules. She has a lot of very high joule usage attacks, so if you are just spamming out her highest joule counts, you will run out of joules. Now, I guess I'll just show these off one by one then. The animations aren't anything to really write home about on any of these attacks. And God, I really hate normal speed. Like, why isn't normal speed like 0.5 times what it should be? Like, it should be 0.5 times faster. So this here is a nice attack, because in her kit, this is the only insta-cast attack on her main kit. Or at least her main attack kit. I mean, the Drain Dimension is obviously instant cast, but the nice thing about this attack is, believe it or not, this particular type of AoE has been very, very good to me. I've had a couple situations where I've managed to get 4 or 5 units into this AoE, and I don't know why that is. It's just kind of the way units, I guess, tend to group that just ends up happening this way. And I'm casting this now because when you cast this, what it's going to do is give her additional cast time reduction, which is going to allow me to launch some of her other attacks a bit faster. So her cast time is down, which means she's now faster than ever. And don't forget, it only lasts a certain number of turns, but because you have buff duration, it lasts longer. So now I'll show off her AoE, and this is her just 5 diamond AoE, and this is really good at clearing a lot of mobs at a given time. Alright, so on to the next attack. So this is the big one. This is the big single target hit right here. And this is going to almost do the most damage in your kit. And this is actually the skill that I believe gets upgraded with the Gate 5. It does have a slower cast speed though. So it's basically a black hole with some water particles. It's nothing special. Alright. So moving on to her sub-kit. The first one here, 65 joules. What is this? Well, it's a shield. How many times have I actually used this shield? Maybe never. It, I believe, reduces 50% damage. I'm really not sure. It says the use count is 3, so I think that means it'll reduce 50% damage 3 times, but it's really hard to test on this map because none of the enemies here do any damage. But it costs a lot of joules, and I just don't use it that often. Now, let's just quick move down to this third attack here. And this is a small AoE, and it's going to inflict sleep and silence onto the enemy. And this is nice because it's kind of like Ultima, where because it doesn't do any damage, it has a 100% hit rate, and the actual rate at which it inflicts the status is based off the status resistance of the enemy. So on maps where the enemies are susceptible to silence or sleep, you will 100% be able to get this off all of the time. So let's go ahead and take one look at the Drain Dimension. Now, the Drain Dimension on Merlinus has one less skill use, to my knowledge, than the normal Drain Dimension, but it gives a 70% magic buff instead of a 60%. So it's slightly more potent at the cost of a skill use. It honestly doesn't matter that much because with the skill buff duration increased, she gets away with having more Drain Dimension uptime than any Armor Mage or Battle Mage could ever hope to have. So, let's see what this looks like when she puts it all together. So, don't forget that she can get away with getting a bunch of buffs up because of her kit. And now I can show off her master abilities. So, this is the master ability from her VCR. And it is a one-time use, and it only lasts a couple of turns, but it's going to give her extra magic defense as well as 65 fire exploit. And let's go ahead and throw a Drain Dimension into this. So now she's stacked fire exploit and magic up, right? And now she's going to absolutely devastate. So before we look at the skill that we actually want to use, let's take a look at the rest of her kit. So that really lower damage fast attacking skill, about 12,000 damage. AoE, 14,500 damage in a 5 diamond on fire enemies. That instacast cross, about 10k damage on fire enemies. And her single target attack, 17k damage on enemies. See, now we're getting somewhere. You could Drain Dimension again if you need to extend the turn, or you need to heal back for about 6k damage. And if you really want to put on the hurt, you can use her Master ability for almost 19,000 damage. Now, mind you, this might actually do a little bit more damage with an Ankh Leader skill. And if you have another way to get her buffed up that I haven't thought of, you might be able to get even more damage out of this. So this is not necessarily the cap, but it is getting close to the cap. And while you might be thinking to yourself, well, this is no 30k damage, what it is it's really high, consistent damage that's AoE. Like, really big AoEs. Like, 15k, like, 15,000 damage, 5 diamond AoEs, these aren't just super common. And that's a really convenient AoE type. Like, Gerard might be able to hit 30k with the right setup, but he can only hit that in a line. Or, like, if he's hitting, like, a 20k AoE, he has to do that and it's right in front of him. Merlinus' kit, her skills have a lot of range, and they have very convenient AoEs to them, along with a bunch of different kinds of AoEs, which just makes it very convenient to use her. So let's go ahead and take a look at her Master ability, or Weapon ability. And there you have it. Merlinus is definitely extremely powerful, and she's a great unit to add to your team. And part of what makes Merlinus better than almost any other collab unit is the banner she's on. So I'm just going to quick go into the banner here, because this is really something that you want to look at. And I'm not going to actually pull in this banner myself, because 1, I don't have any jewels, and 2, I already have her where I want her. But look at that. Step 3, guaranteed. We just don't get those anymore. And Step 5 gives additional shards for her. So you can guarantee that you get Merlinus in Japan. I don't know if it'll be like this when she comes to Global, but this is the second time we've gotten this guarantee banner for her. So hopefully when Global gets her, they will have that 3-step guarantee. She is very much worth getting. When at level 75, she operates at a Kaigan level. And I'm just going to repeat that so you can understand. A level 75 Merlinus is basically on par with a mid-tier Kaigan unit. She's better than some of them. At level 75 with only 2 gear slots, she is better than some Kaigan units and operates very, very effectively. She can do more damage than Ultima could ever hope to have. Although Ultima, the reason we like Ultima is because of the utility in his kit, less so than the actual damage he does. So she's one of the higher dealing magic units in the water element, even before she gets Kaigan, along with an insanely good water magic leader skill, a free Nenso guaranteed to get her at step 3. You really cannot ask for much more of a collab unit than this. She's actually, it's very generous of Gumi to give out a unit that's this good with this few strings attached, but they did it, and they will probably never do it again because we have not seen anything even remotely close to Merlinus' power level from a guaranteed unit since. At least that's my opinion on the matter. It's not necessarily true, but she is definitely, without a doubt, one of the most powerful units in her archetype as a water magic unit. And with the Ankh leader skill, she might be really good in mixed teams. The one downside I could ever think about Merlinus is because she is a collab unit, that does mean that she will not benefit from Nenso buffs from other regions. But that is a relatively small downside for the just behemoth of a monster that is Merlinus. And I am using a little bit of hyperbole here. It's not like she's the best unit in the game, but she is extremely powerful. She's much easier to obtain and raise than other collab units. She's just such a great unit. I'm really glad that I got her on the first run. and I definitely would not trade her for any other unit. I like her, and she's held up better over time than Arthur did, for sure. So yeah, definitely get her if you get the chance. Anyways, guys, this has probably been my last video for today, unless I can think of something that I'm really missing. I know that I put out a lot of material today, but it was my day off, and I figured that I'd get a lot of stuff done. I didn't even know Lucia was coming today, and I only learned about Merlinus, obviously, yesterday, because that's when that information broke, although I was sick all day yesterday, so I couldn't... I woke up today just hoping to feel better so I could do all this stuff, and I did. So anyways, guys, thanks again, as always, for watching, and I hope to see you next time.